Tropple E Armitage, writer of the Weekly Steamswaddle. This is his story. Tropple E Armitage almost always got invited to anything worth attending, and some that weren't, in London's high society. It wasn't that people necessarily liked him. In fact, many didn't. It was simply that people were afraid of him. He wasn't tall, and certainly not muscular or even what might be called athletic, and he was the last person you would expect to win a duel, though rumours said he had. People feared him because Tropple E Armitage was a writer, and not just any writer. He wrote the Weekly Steamswaddle column, published in the more authoritative newspapers around town, and he was merciless at exposing the proclivities of his hosts and their friends. No one was safe from his quill. He liked the power he wielded, the ability to come and go at will from a circle he was not born to be part of. To most, his origins were a mystery, though he was once said to have claimed to have been born on an airship over the English Channel, but he never elaborated on it, and no one ever dared to ask the question, "What was your mother doing on an airship when she was about to give birth?" It seems so improbable that most who heard it thought it must be true, which was what Tropple wanted, since it masked the truth of the narrow, rat-infested streets of the old Nickel, where his mother lived and died while he was still an infant. He was too young to feel her loss, and her death was probably what saved him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been taken in by Mrs. Armitage, the cook in one of the larger houses near Hyde Park. It was her determination that he was to go to school and learn to read and write, which provided his pathway to where he was today. That, and his almost invisible presence in a household where a finer form of English was spoken than on the streets. The servant class, if they were seen, were rarely heard. He had grown up hearing how, what Mrs. Armitage called, fine people spoke, and copying them, at first just to make fun of how they spoke, and later so he would seem to be one of them, but he knew he wasn't, even if others were uncertain. Tropple liked having power. The power of the quill, he had called it once, and chuckled at the thought. A son of some lord had once taken exception to something he had written about his family, and had challenged him to a duel, which he accepted. When he was asked to name his weapon, which was the tradition since he wasn't the challenger, he replied, "A quill and ink." The challenger had laughed, but Tropple had kept a straight face. "Are you afraid, sir?" he had asked. "Afraid of a quill? Certainly not," came the indignant reply. "Then whoever writes the most entertaining and original 12-line poem in 3 minutes, as judged by those here," Tropple said, waving his hand at the crowd around them, "shall be judged the winner." "That's ridiculous," said his challenger. "I sense you are afraid, sir. I don't wish to embarrass you if you're unable to write." He thought he had gone too far. He could see veins bulging on his challenger's neck, and his fists were tight balls that must have had the nails cutting into his flesh. "It's an equal match, sir, since I assume we can both write, despite my unthinking comment," Tropple said, trying to avoid the beating he could sense would occur otherwise. He was saved by a young woman, arriving with 2 quills, ink and paper, which almost forced the challenger to agree, or to appear at the very least to be a bad sport. They sat in the drawing-room, at tables opposite each other, with 2 witnesses, someone to keep the time, and someone to carry the 2 poems to the people waiting outside, where they would read them and place a mark on the one that each liked. In that way, there could be no loyalty vote, which could go against either of them, though in Tropple's case he knew it would have been him. 3 minutes passed extremely quickly, and Tropple was very happy to hand his efforts to the witness, though his challenger looked less comfortable. They waited, while everyone read their work. Tropple, quietly confident, and his challenger, just quiet. Finally, the doors opened, and the crowd poured in. The witness collected the 2 pieces of paper and looked at the ticks. One was much fuller than the other. "I declare that the winner is Mr. Armitage," he announced. Thank you, everyone. Your support for my poem is appreciated," said Tropple as his challenger stormed out of the room. "Clearly, I write a better poem." He smiled, not because his poem was better. In fact, it was so bad he would not usually have admitted to writing such rubbish. But he assumed that the crowd would think that the better poem must be his, and out of loyalty to his challenger, they would have given their vote to the other poem. And so he won the duel, not by talent, but by guile, the same guile he applied to his column, and that is why he is so feared, him and the Weekly Steamswaddle. The quill really is mightier than the pistol or the sword.